Some of the most beautiful areas in America are located in rural areas. Whether it is a mountain vista, a beautiful wheat field, a quiet bayou, or a small town, rural areas are special places. Rural areas, by their very nature, present challenges when it comes to roadway transportation. Isolated roadways with small or non-existent shoulders, vegetation and other obstacles close to the road, dirt roadways, wildlife, and narrow two-lane roadways that give little leeway for a vehicle that drifts out of their travel lane. All of these present challenges for the people who build and maintain these roadways and for those who use them. Nearly half of the nation's highway fatalities occur on rural roads, while only 19% of the nation's population live in rural areas, and rural roadways account for only 30% of miles driven. To address the risks on rural roads, some agencies have developed local or regional safety plans that target the specific issues faced in rural areas. Before we go through the various steps involved in developing a plan, let's hear from several people who have been involved in a regional or local effort to understand why they developed a plan and what lessons they learned. Why did you develop a regional plan?
East-West Gateway Council of Governments decided to partner with Missouri Department of Transportation and the 5 Missouri counties within our region to develop safety plans because we saw the value of focusing on improving safety on local roads. MoDOT realized 67% of local road fatalities happened in 14 counties, while the other 101 counties made up 33%. MoDOT, along with East-West Gateway, saw the benefit of creating local plans for those 14 counties in hopes for significantly reducing the number of fatalities on the local roads.
What lessons did you learn?
So in Minnesota, we developed county road safety plans for all 87 counties. And a key to that planning process was using the systemic approach to highway safety. And one of the hallmarks of the systemic approach is identifying risk factors for your system. And those risk factors, basically, they're features of the roadway system that you can correlate to serious crashes. So if you maybe look at a radius of a horizontal curve, you look at the skew of an intersection, the ADT, the traffic volume of a roadway segment. So what you're trying to do is you're teasing out those relationships between those risk factors and those features of the roadway. And one of the other aspects that I think is very powerful for the systemic approach is the phone call that the county engineer will get on a regular basis, which is, how many people have to die before you do something? We can make those investments today. And so that was, I think, one of the overall arching successes for Minnesota was developing the plans and using the plans, developing the plans based upon the systemic approach.
If you want to develop and implement an effective safety plan, there are several common steps. The FHWA's Manual for Developing Safety Plans organizes the process into 6 key steps. Establish leadership, analyze safety data, determine emphasis areas, identify strategies, prioritize and incorporate strategies, and evaluate and update the LRSP. It's important to realize that this process is flexible. It can and should be adapted to meet your local needs, resources, and other factors. For example, here is a roadmap to getting home safely that summarizes the common steps that agencies follow. So as we elaborate on the steps, remember that this is a starting place for developing your own local road safety plan. Step 1 is to establish leadership. A major component of this step is to select the partners who will help develop and implement your plan. Look for stakeholders who represent the 4 E's of safety: engineering, enforcement, education, and emergency medical services. Also, make sure your group is multidisciplinary so you can draw on a broad knowledge base. Don't forget to reach out to public health officials and community leaders. Your stakeholders will provide invaluable insight as you implement and evaluate your plan. How did you identify partners?
To identify these partners, we started by contacting members of the St. Louis Region's Blueprint Coalition. The coalition is made up of safety stakeholders representing all 4 E's within the St. Louis region who are working to implement different parts of Missouri's blueprint. We then worked with each county to identify which municipality needed to be involved based on the crash data. This included public works staff, law enforcement, mayors, and their staff.
This is also the opportunity to work with your partners to develop a vision, mission, and goals. A vision and mission clearly articulate what your region or agency hopes to accomplish in reducing fatal and injury crashes. They are your big picture or aspirational outcomes related to road safety and often reinforce your overall agency goals. The mission and vision play an important role in guiding the planning process and keeping everyone moving toward common goals. Here is an example from Nevada County, California, of an LRSP vision and mission. Your goals should tie back to the vision and mission. A goal communicates what kind of safety change the region or agency intends to accomplish. Your goal should be specific and measurable and include a target and a timeline for improving safety. Here is an example goal established for an LRSP. Now we're ready to move on to step 2, analyze safety data. Your work to collect and analyze safety data is essential to this planning process. A review of the safety data will determine the most serious roadway safety risks, the locations of these problems, and the contributing factors. Safety data can include crash data, traffic violations, maintenance logs, and roadway features, just to name a few. Is data important to developing a safety plan?
So once you get your coalition, you have your members, then you need to look at the crash data. Crash data is going to direct you more than anything else.
In step 3, it's time to determine the emphasis areas for your plan. Your data will tell you what you need to focus on. It might be roadway departures, or pedestrians and bicyclists, intersections, or impaired driving, or a combination thereof. Your region or agency does not have to tackle all of the emphasis areas at the same time. For example, many local rural agencies focus their first efforts on addressing roadway departure crashes on curves, because that is where they have the most risk, crashes, and opportunities to make improvements. What were your emphasis areas?
Our 4 emphasis areas were indeed young drivers, occupant protection, impaired driving, and infrastructure and operation. Our data also showed that we also need to look at our vulnerable road users, which many know as bike ped users.
Once you have your priorities, you can move on to step 4. Identify the strategies or solutions to improve the high-risk areas that are within the emphasis areas you identified in step 3. FHWA and NHTSA have excellent resources on proven safety countermeasures that can help you achieve the goals established for your region and agency. What process did you use to select the strategies for your safety plan?
So what we did is we broke our system down into 3 key elements. The first type of element was just roadway segments, number 2 was curves, and third was intersections.
Were the strategies only focused on infrastructure improvements?
The County Road Safety Plan in Minnesota was an infrastructure-based plan. There are some aspects of the safety plan that you could actually use to assist other safety partnerships like enforcement. You think specifically about roadway segments that are at risk, those tend to correlate pretty well with, for example, speed enforcement. So you can use the safety plan to identify maybe surrogate efforts for safety improvements. And so we tried to craft the safety strategies for the plan in such a way that we put as many eggs into the basket of proven strategies. We used the national strategies basically as a basis, or the universal strategies, to identify which ones were best for the safety plan.
As you select solutions, consider educational, behavioral, and infrastructure approaches. For example, strategies for pedestrian improvements at intersections could include leading pedestrian intervals at signalized intersections, roundabouts, raised medians, education, or wider sidewalks, depending on the specific risk and crash types identified. Now that your strategies are in place, it is time to move them into action. In step 5, you will prioritize and incorporate your strategies. You might also call this the implementation phase. Some local agencies and regions have found it helpful to create a separate action plan to supplement the LRSP. For each action, the plan will include a timeline, staff and resources needed, cost and funding source, and who will help implement it. It should also state which agency has agreed to lead the implementation and make sure it's completed. As you develop an action plan for each strategy, you will find that some solutions will be quicker to implement than others. For example, signing and marking can be done with maintenance staff, whereas adding rumble strips or additional width to shoulders may require longer planning time plus design and construction resources. How did you implement your strategies?
For each emphasis area, we developed an action plan. In that action plan, we developed strategies, some infrastructure, some behavioral. We then have steps listed, action steps with action leaders. We define who, what, when, where, and how. At our regularly scheduled meetings, our coalition partners join together, provide status updates on the action steps.
Finally, step 6, evaluate and update your plan. After your safety plan is implemented, or a portion of it is implemented, it is important to evaluate if the solutions were a good fit for your risks and issues. Tracking and reporting provide a way for your partners and the community to see the progress of implementing the safety plan, which helps to ensure continued support, such as leveraging multiple funding sources for improvements. If you have a multi-year plan, your agency should evaluate the data and progress each year to determine if adjustments are needed and if the plan needs to be updated. In addition, your agency should evaluate whether your overall process was effective. Were the correct stakeholders involved? Can the organizational structure be improved? These activities will be especially helpful when you decide to update your plan. What have been the results of your safety plan?
There's some early promising results in Minnesota. Between 2011 and 2014, this is preliminary data, but we've got some very interesting results. If you look at the jurisdictional class across the state of Minnesota, you're looking at the county road system, the state truck highway system, and the U.S. system, including U.S. highways and interstates. For that period, after the widespread deployment of the safety plan strategies, there was a 25% reduction in the fatality rate of just the county road system. The other jurisdictional routes, the state highways, the U.S. highways, and the interstate system, for the most part stayed flat. The results are being communicated. I think the energy, the attractiveness of the way the safety plans have been created and how they're performing in Minnesota has become very interesting across the country. And I mean, after all, this is a data-driven approach, and we have to use data to achieve the results that we're looking for. And this is, I think, one of the best ways that we can possibly do that.
What final lessons learned can you share?
It's important to have influential people who can make a change within their entity, as well as having people who are positive and believe in the process. Along with having the influential people on board, it's also good to have people who work on the roads every day and can back up the data that's being presented to the group.
We hope this summary of common steps and the personal insights from the practitioners will help get you started as you develop your own local road safety plan. For more resources, visit FHWA's LRSP DIY website.